This morning we spent some time reviewing actually issues related to the operation of housing markets and housing prices and bubbles in housing markets, and talking a little bit about how institutions in Kenya are different than institutions in, say, North America or Europe, and what the consequences of those differences might be. But in general, my impression is that although the institutions are quite different and the problems are expressed in different ways, the same problems are present in almost all cities. So people are concerned about the quality of life in cities and the sustainability of urban living. People are concerned about traffic congestion and its impacts on the quality of life and housing and development patterns. People are concerned about the quality of public services like schools and policing, and concerned about the way cities grow and the preservation of open space and things that are important for a high quality of life. So it's really interesting to have a chance to kind of see how the problems are expressed here in a very different institutional context, then think about the similarities also between all of these various places. In North American cities, public transportation has never been very successful. The percentage of the population who uses public transit for their daily activities is maybe 8-9% in most cities. It's really only been successful along limited corridors where the density of population is really high, parts of Manhattan in New York or parts of Chicago. But most U.S. cities, unfortunately, were developed during the period when the automobile was the dominant mode of transportation. And so they're very spread out, they're very dispersed. And public transit in those circumstances is just not optimal. That is, it's not in the interests of a person to actually use the public transit system. It's cheaper to use a car, much cheaper. Even with congestion, it's cheaper to use a car. So the opportunities for private participation in public transit, I think, are actually pretty fascinating. And you're seeing this innovation right now in this Uber, private alternative to taxi cabs. So in some cities in North America and Europe, this company has arisen with sort of an IT foundation that allows you to use your phone to order a ride, a cab, but it's not a cab. It's just a person like me who wants to drive a car, and they have this app. So there's a lot of innovation coming through that part of private participation in public transit. And it seems to me that this is an area that's absolutely ripe for innovation. If you look at transportation systems in the United States and Canada, there's been almost no innovation in the last 50 years. They're basically doing today what they did in 1960. It's buses running, carrying huge amounts of excess capacity most of the time, and heavy rail systems that are designed to take people out into the suburbs. So I think a different system that allowed for easier access by individuals using information technology, perhaps focused on clean energy cars, would be I think there are some real possibilities there to innovate the transportation system for good effect. Universities have a big role to play here, in my view, and business schools in particular have a big role here to play, in my view. I believe that current students have a real thirst for a set of values that they can use to guide decision making throughout their careers, both personally and professionally. And I think, and Strathmore has been very involved in this, as has UBC recently, is trying to create an educational program for students that allows them to create kind of a refined sense of ethics, to recognize ethical dilemmas when they occur, and to have the tools to make appropriate judgments about ethical problems. So I see in Strathmore an emphasis on ethics in education. And at the Sauder School at UBC, I've been pushing or encouraging people to to try to incorporate more ethical education and experience into all of our programs. We've recently created a new Center for Business Ethics, and I know that there's something similar here at Strathmore. And the students, the young people, kind of see the positive contributions of business to society as one of the reasons why they're interested in studying in a business school. I think they feel like, in addition to having a successful career in a conventional sense, having the ability to make a contribution to social objectives more broadly is a key attribute of what they want to accomplish in their careers. So I think there's kind of a sea change coming here. I think this generation is very focused on issues related to transparency, good governance, sustainability, and ethical decision making. Well, as an economist, my bias would be to try to use private initiative to solve these problems. And I'll step back for just a second and say, if you look broadly at the vector of big issues that face us today, climate change, you could think of informal settlements in a community like Nairobi, sustainability, inequality. If you look at those kinds of issues and ask yourself, is the government going to be able to solve these problems? I think the answer is obviously no. That there's going to have to be significant private initiative and innovation and participation in basically all of the big issues that face us as a society, which kind of links back to this question about the way ethics fit into education and the role in the culture. So thinking specifically about informal settlements in a developing country, that is a really hard problem, because it's hard to separate those issues from poverty. And so it's hard to know if it's possible to really effectively address those issues without also addressing economic development, healthcare, and equal opportunity, which I see as kind of the cornerstone of most effective social policy. The governance issues are important. The issues related to land tenure and property rights are also very important. But I think the government has a limited role, and there needs to be more private participation in these issues.